Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Parent and Family Services Tiger Talks. This is our first in our spring 2026 line of Tiger Talks. Want to welcome you all here. If you're listening later to the recording, we thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. But I'd first like to start. Um, of course, we're going to get to know someone special today. And so I won't take too much time, but I'd like to start with introductions. My name is Heather Hampton, and I'm Assistant Director for Parent and Family Services at the U of M. And I'll toss it over to Brittany.
I'm Brittany Lester. I'm the Parent, Family, and Student Communications Coordinator. So we're a team of two people.
And then we'll toss it to Dr. Cameron just to introduce himself real quickly.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Antwone Cameron. I serve as the Associate Vice President of Student Affairs and the Dean of Students. Excited to be here.
All right, and we are excited for you to be here because we want families to get to know who you are and the Dean of Students Office and the wonderful services that you all provide for students and their families who support them. But first, I'd like to start off just with a quick question. Just what was your journey? What led you here to the U of M? I know you're fairly new and
Yeah.
probably still went head first into a lot of things. But tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to the U of M.
Yeah, that's a great question, Heather. Uh, I want to start with just giving a very brief overview of myself and where I'm from and how I got here and how my who raised me. So I think that's really important to know who somebody is before the journey starts, right? So for me, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. My grandparents, they raised me. Um, I'm a first gen college student. So I know what it means and what it takes to navigate a difficult space like navigating college and ultimately graduating from school. My grandparents both had high school degrees, or high school diplomas, I'm sorry. And they're both from the South. My grandfather's from Shelby, Mississippi. My grandmother was from Ripley, Tennessee. And they're both deceased now. But, in my life, they knew the power of education and they knew what it took and what it meant in order to get me to be in a safe space and a space to really transform, you know, how I see that, start to develop. As education being the sticking point, they put me in Catholic school growing up. And, it was a phenomenal experience to understand and to be in a space. So I'm not Catholic personally, but to understand that I go to a church on Sundays that looks very different from this school that I go to. And, it taught me very quickly how to be adaptable and how to, be able to adjust. And right. And I think you can be stretched a little bit. It's such a great space to be in. So I ended up going to the university for my undergraduate degree, as well as my master's degree. And I remember when my grandparents, they dropped me off, they told me good luck. And I cried. I cried because like, what does good luck mean? And it sounds like a setup almost. But what followed shortly after that, my grandfather told me he wanted to see me graduate before he died, right? So that became like the push for me. You know what I mean? I know I don't know anything about college or universities. I know I don't know anything about student affairs. I've never heard of a dean of students. I've never heard of Greek life, none of those things. But what I did know is that he said he wanted me to do something. My grandfather was a military man. So I grew up every Saturday at 7 a.m. and I had to cut the grass no matter what, right? And I would tell my grandfather, Papa, no, I want to cut it later. And he just looked at me and I knew what that meant. So at 7 a.m., I'm going outside to cut that grass. So when he told me, I want to see you graduate before I die. I knew what that meant, right? Because as a military man, he gave orders, right? So I'm listening to those orders, and I know that that means I have to ask for help along the way. So at the university, again, not knowing much of anything about how a university works, I started just ask questions. I started to sign up for every club and organization. I don't even know what some of these clubs or organizations were, what they meant, but I knew I needed to find a connection and a sticking point to help me navigate the university. So much so that, I mean, I did sign up for everything. I was overcommitted, but I was happy, right? Because I felt like I've built and developed community. I was an RA. I was the president of our programming board. I was in minority male groups focused on graduation and retention. I was in a couple of honoraries. I was in student government. I mean, you name it, I was a part of it. And at the end of it, it was really cool because one of the honoraries at the University of Cincinnati, the oldest one and the second oldest one, since Sigma Sigma is the oldest, and when they tap you into that honorary, they engrave your name in the ground.
Mm.
So when I was about to graduate, and I was able to have my grandparents come to it, I was able to show them not only did I graduate, but I left my mark and I left a legacy. I was able to go on and get my master's degree at the university, and shortly after that, my grandfather passed away. Um, and for me, it felt like he was okay because he felt like the mission was completed and he could
Right.
leave me in a better space. And ultimately, I ended up getting my doctorate degree, and it felt really special because even though my grandmother wasn't able to see me do that, she was there through 75% of it to see me get my doctorate. And I think that just kind of ties back into their testament of education can unlock and do more than any other thing that you can imagine. So that's a little bit about my background. So what got me here and how did I land here? So ironically, maybe about 15 years ago, I actually started out working at Belmont University in Nashville, right? So I started off in residence life and I did my thing in residence life for a while. I ended up getting another position at Thomas More University back closer to home. It was in Northern Kentucky. So it took me really close. It was around the time my grandfather was passing away. So I was happy to be back close to my grandmother, and I also got promoted a few times and ultimately got to be an assistant dean of students and ultimately to be a dean of students. And then it transitioned several years after that to become the dean of students at Chicago State University, which is where I'm coming from most recently. So I spent a long time in Chicago as well before transitioning over to the University of Memphis. And one of the things that really attracts me to the university is the city, right? I think that the city of Memphis is similar enough to the city of Chicago, of course, not by size, but by makeup. And I think that the story of a student who has to really grind and figure it out and they need help is one that deeply resonates in me because I was that same story. And knowing that where I came from and knowing that I can also speak the same language as a lot of the students who we serve was really a standout to me, along well of being at a Research One institution and a big time Division One institution. And it's kind of my language, right? So at the University of Cincinnati, we had a lot of good battles with the University of Memphis. So I was very familiar. I was very and I'm excited to be here. So that's what my journey so far looked like, and a little bit about my upbringing as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that. One thing that a couple of things that stood out to me was you being a first generation college student. So I know we have a lot of first generation college students here and a lot of first generation families who support those students. So I'm sure that resonates with them as someone who kind of knows what that experience may be like. And then another thing, and something that we like to remind families of, is that the definition of family is always different from one student to the next. And just I keyed in on you saying that you were raised by your grandparents, and so just a reminder to all families, that we don't narrowly define. It may not be a mom and a birth mom and a birth dad, or a blood relative. Even it could be a friend or a cousin. So that's how we define it. So that really stood out to me about your journey and your background. But thank you for sharing that. It sounds like um, it sounds like a movie. Like it could be a movie, like this triumphant movie, and just how you went from not knowing things and getting involved, and hopefully families can get in some inspiration just from that little portion right there.
Absolutely.
But we'll go ahead and jump into our first question. How would you describe the role of Dean of Students office and just the Dean of Students? I know it may be different at each institution, but that's something that maybe parents or family members aren't necessarily, clear on. What is a Dean of Students and what do they do?
That's a good question, right? So similar to me, when I started at the University of Cincinnati, never heard of a dean of students, right? So,
Right.
and it's ironic that, I've been a dean of students at, three different institutions now. But what I see a dean of students office as is almost like a central hub for support when it able to fill the gap. So we focus on the whole student, by supporting their personal growth, their well-being, their accountability, and their sense of belonging, right? So they can fully engage in this academic journey. The journey is oftentimes difficult, right? Especially if you are first gen, and sometimes it can feel lonely too. And we don't want people to do that. So we want to again be the folks who kind of step in and fill some of those gaps. So I'll also explain what the kind of the breakdown of some of the people who report to the dean of students. So in the Dean of Students office, we have the Office of Student Accountability. So that's conduct. But of course, we don't need to talk about conduct because everybody's on their best behavior, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Exactly. But no, seriously, we have conduct. So if there's academic misconduct or non academic misconduct that is handled in this office. We have the behavioral intervention team. So if there are students who are struggling, inside the classroom, outside of the classroom, we actually meet weekly to talk about how we can best support some of our students. We also have an associate dean of uh, support and advocacy for students, which is a new position to really focus on how we can best be there again to fill in some of those gaps. We also host the Tiger Pantry, right? So the food pantry on campus is housed within the Dean of Students office. And just a little tidbit about that, my dissertation is on security, right? And the impacts of food insecurity and the role it plays on a student's sense of belonging and academic achievement. So in short, very, very quickly, I think that it's hard to think about um, how some basic needs might not be met, and we expect students to fully see themselves whole and graduate, right? If they don't have basic needs met, it gets really hard to do that. So the food pantry is a space where we want students to know that we are here to support them, not only in the space of, finding that they can fit in somewhere in the university, but if you don't have food, we want you to have food. And if you don't have access to it, stop by the Dean of Students office. We also have a coordinator who has an emergency student fund. So if a student doesn't have some resources, some financial resources, they're eligible to apply for a student emergency fund 2 times in their academic journey for up to $500 each time they ask. So $1,000 total. If students don't have food outside of just the food pantry, we also have a meal swipe system, right? So we can give a student a ticket that gives them access to the Tiger Den to be able to get some food while they're on campus too. So again, we're here to really fill in a lot of the gaps. And then also, and I think almost really, really an important office that we have is the Office of Counseling and Wellness, right? So for the students who might need some resources with counseling, we have that as well, free of charge, where students can get some of those additional pieces of support out of our office.
Wonderful. So you did talk about how you help them navigate those situations with conduct, behavior, support, advocacy, and the Tiger Pantry. So what are you think the most common challenges students come to your office with, specifically here at University of Memphis?
Yeah, I think the challenges, Brittany, are you see the same challenges in a lot of places. Oftentimes, they're most related to stress and mental health. So I think that counseling center is a phenomenal center to be in. Um, we also see the financial hardships also take place. So when we have these behavioral intervention meetings, we kind of talk about holistically where the students are that are on this list and how we can best support them. But there are just struggles, right? I think everyday struggles that people just run into. I mean, I think that people often think that us as administrators or staff people or whoever, we don't have issues either, right? But no, we also have issues. I think everybody has issues at different
Yes.
parts of time, right? But
That's right.
I think the ability to help students navigate their issues in the best way possible, right?
Mhm.
Because what we're ultimately here to do is to have them be better versions of themselves than what they came here as. So as these problems approach, to be able to teach students the best way to problem solve and critically think is, I think, one of the byproducts of what this office also does and supports.
I love
I think
that.
that's good. That kind of goes into our our next question, because you mentioned several times advocacy. That's
Yeah.
kind of a word, a theme that's hit me as you speak. But what does that advocacy look like?
Mhm.
And is it advocacy in action? Is it advocacy in policy? Like what does that look like?
All of it, right? So, I
Hmm.
think advocacy to me is a verb, right? It is an action, right? It's
Hmm.
hard to advocate without doing anything behind it. That's
Hmm.
just kind of talking, right?
Yeah.
But we
Mhm.
want to do something to make something move, right?
Right.
So we advocate by serving as connectors and problem solvers, right? We want to fill in the gap. So more than likely, we know who these people are who can help with whatever situation the student brings to us. So it's not just saying, go over here to this office or talk to this person. It could
Hmm.
be walking that person over there. It could
Yeah.
be getting on the phone while a student is there and connecting. It could be the email connection, but it's also a follow up, right? It's not just
Hmm.
knowing that I did this one thing and I forgot about it and move on to the next. It's really trying to make a situation whole, and we're closing the loop to make sure that whatever the thing that they brought to us, we're actually addressing and we're helping them in the best way that we can.
Yeah.
So again, that might look like coordinating conversations with faculty, helping a student understand a process. Why does it look like this, and why did this happen? Well, this is why. It could be identifying accommodations or support services, or just making sure that they feel heard. Oftentimes, I think students feel like they just want to be seen or heard. And I
Hmm.
think sometimes we're so quick to just point people in the right direction versus really sit down and talk to people. And that's my approach, really, to reduce some of these barriers, to reduce some of the stigmas, and to really just lay it out there and let people know that I'm here for you, and this is what this looks like, and I'll be here throughout this journey, and not just for this one situation.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that you mentioned kind of made me think of the next question when you said that they just oftentimes want to feel seen and heard. So, what do you think are some of the ways your office helps students feel that sense of belonging?
Yeah. So, again, I think the dean of students office is not a programming office, right? So it gets difficult to kind of think about what are some of the ways and the things in which a dean of students office can operate, because mainly I think traditionally it is a space where we can support and we can connect some of the dots. I want to kind of push us into the next realm of thinking with this dean of students office. So there was a survey done last year that reported on some loneliness numbers that students felt, that attend the university. And to me, uh, loneliness is a big thing, and I think it can impact a lot of things that students do, from feeling engaged in the classroom to feeling like they feel like they have a place at the university. So what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to launch a lot of things, right? So I'm a big dreamer too. My grandparents, they used to tell me all the time, go, Antoine, go sit down somewhere, because always want to do something. I get excited when I talk about things, but a few of the things I want to launch and lift in the Dean of Students office coming up is I want to start a supper club series, right? So tying in the idea that uh, my dissertation is on food insecurity. I also have created food pantries on 2 different campuses. Um, I presented nationally at NASPA on food pantries and the best practices of food pantries. But my major in undergrad was also dietetics, so food and nutrition. So it kind of blends all of these things back together. But in a very let me wrap it up because I know we got another question. But what I want to do is create a supper club series that bridges dietetics into the wellness center across, where the rec is. They have a kitchen in there. And what I want to do is I want to take some food from the food pantry and do healthy eating meal tutorials tied with social work or the psychology department to bring people together, right? So almost to think that people have a seat at the table, literally and figuratively, right? So when you're here, you don't need to be lonely because we're going to set up intentional spaces for you not to feel lonely. But we're also going to elevate the food pantry to reduce some of the stigma that people may feel like it feels like going there by way of making healthy meals that you can get out of the food pantry. So really tying in a lot of ideas, and really trying to help people see that wherever you go on this campus, you can feel like you have a place. And I think this is a very intentional place to do so. So again, I have partnerships in the works with dietetics. I've been talking to Melissa Peterson about it, as well as launching it with different groups around campus. So one of the first ones we want to do is with um, the International Students Office. So Dr. Rebecca, she's going to be the first group that I pilot this supper club with. So we look forward to seeing some of the good things that come from that.
That is a wonderful idea. And I was just thinking like, oh, the Tiger Food Lab will be a great partner with that. Or even something like, have students demonstrate, go through the Tiger Pantry and pick out
That's right.
ingredients and say, okay,
Mhm.
here's a meal you can make with this, you know.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
so I just went to the Mid-South Food Bank on Friday, and I got a
Mhm.
tour of the facility. I mean, it's a beautiful facility. So, I'm excited to really launch a lot of cross collaborative partnerships,
Yeah.
see what we can do to get Kroger back involved.
Yeah.
And then one idea that I'm actually trying to launch this year is this end of the year event called The Longest Table. So again, when I talked about like this literal and figuratively term of coming
Hmm.
together at the table, a seat at the table, the longest table is really bringing that idea to life, where we're outside during a lunch period and we bring together two to 300 people that
Yeah.
are faculty, students, staff, community members, to really show that the connection and the community is here on this campus, and we're going to get a chance to see it. And there'll be table topics on the tables that people
Hmm.
can really talk and meet with strangers and hopefully feel a deeper sense of belonging back to the university.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That would be
So
something good to plug some family members in as well with that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I select a date, because I think that this thing is going to start to kick off really quickly, I'll be sure to
Mhm.
loop you in to invite families back because I would love to see families be a part of it. And to your point, I think you eloquently put, family looks different, right? So
Yeah.
like, for me, as somebody who really doesn't have a lot of family anymore, my friends are
Mhm.
my family now, right?
Right.
So as long as I know somebody is there that knows me and came from me, that I consider
Mhm.
you family.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
My buddy, my homie.
that's right.
Come on
That's right.
over.
Mhm.
So, one thing you mentioned, food insecurity and just helping and the sense of belonging and helping students not feel lonely. So that kind of transitions over into like the personal development and overall well-being of students.
Mhm.
So, what other programs or services, or the ones you just talked about, even how do they support the personal development of a student? I think that's one thing that you mentioned
Yeah.
in your being raised and
Yeah.
coming to college and developing from just that kind of seed all the way into where you begin to bloom and flourish. So
Yeah.
how does your office support that journey for a student, and how also can families help your office support their students in that journey?
Yeah. So, I think for me, a big part of how do we make this development happen is going out and meeting students where they are, right?
Yeah.
So, I try to always go out and support students through some of the events that they do and show up in spaces where they frequent, right? I mean, it's really easy to talk about what it is that we do, and we do it from behind this desk, and you'll never see me outside of this
Right.
office, right? But like that doesn't make sense, and that's not
Mhm.
genuine either. So,
Right.
a lot of the things I try to do is I try to meet students literally where they are. So, for example, today I supported a student group who was doing Valentine's Day cards, right? So they're doing a fundraiser, and that means showing up to the fundraiser and spending some time with them and donating, right? Like,
Mhm.
as they try to put their money together, for me to donate something back to them makes them feel like they feel seen, they feel heard,
Right.
and they felt so inclined enough to invite me over. So I feel obliged and obligated to do that, right? But
Mhm.
even beyond that, is really being intentional. So one thing that I'm also looking to try to pilot this semester is almost a dean of students um, advocacy group, right? Well, that is
Mm.
only students. And I want to hear what's going on at the student level. So, I want a transfer student on here. I want a first gen student on here. I want athlete on here, right? And just these different groups of subsections of students to find out how can we best support and
Mhm.
help them develop. Thinking about where are some of the biggest things that students need, thinking about this mental health. Are there things that we need to start to implement in different ways? Like, is there a group therapy session that we could use for certain groups? Is there a wellness retreat that is needed that doesn't happen? Is there a dodgeball tournament that needs to happen with staff and students, right? How can this cross collaboration really take place, and how can we really be best to support students where they are? And I think, again, I mentioned earlier, being present goes a long way. You can talk
Yeah.
it all day, but showing up in the spaces that they are is the real piece that really makes it connect. And so again, during these trainings, RA trainings or student leader trainings, you'll see me. You'll see me all over the place. They just had a gospel explosion on last Friday, and I was there, right? And so being there and supporting them in the spaces where they feel like they're being their whole and true selves
Mhm.
is where I want to be.
Mm. That's
Yeah, I
good.
love that. I love that you're getting invited to these things and showing up. So that's cool to
Mhm.
hear. And then you talked about that you're starting an advocacy group.
Mhm.
So what resources or services do you think both students and families may not realize are actually available through your office?
Yeah, I think most people don't know really what happens inside of a dean student's office anyway. So I think people don't know that they can call up and really just ask for help, right? So they don't know that we probably have these behavioral intervention team meetings on every Monday, right? Where we talk about best ways that we can support and lift up students and make sure that they are well. I'm sure they probably don't know about some of these emergency assistant referrals, right? So either the Tiger Pantry or the emergency student fund that we can, support students with. They
Mhm.
probably aren't aware of some of the conflict resolution that we'll do to really help students feel like they can get through um, whatever situation that they might find themselves in. And again, just this student advocacy part, right? This coordination of campus partners and connecting with, if you have an issue with financial aid and you don't know where to go or what to do, or if you have an eye in a course and you don't know where to go, or if you are on the last date to do something, what happens, right? Again, I find myself as a stopgap for some of that, right? And we have the associate dean of student advocacy and support, who also focuses primarily on that same thing, that advocacy and support. So anything outside of the classroom, we're really here to help with. And
Mhm.
I think the families who know, they know and they call, and the ones who don't, they don't, right?
They
But
call us,
they right, and then you
which is
affirm up
fine. I
here,
want them to, so we can connect them back
and
to
if we'll,
you.
that's right, and we'll eventually get that call. But
Yeah.
again, we are here to support however we can. If even if it's outside of our scope and our realm, we'll still make it
Mhm.
happen. So we are fully here to make sure that students who enter this university find a way to ultimately graduate from this university.
Right. That's very important. That
Mhm.
kind of goes along when you said you'll find a way
Yeah,
to ensure that you're helping them, and that kind of goes along with the collaborations and partnering with other departments around campus
that's
and
right.
also in the community. So in partnering with other departments, what would you say? And it's kind of a little spin on the question because you kind of already answered it in several different ways. But what would you say would be your your go-to partners in the community? At least like your let's just say your main go-to partner in the community, and
Yeah.
then maybe a couple on campus that you tend to find students gravitate toward needing help with that.
Yeah. So what I would say is, uh, ideally, outside partners who I would love to like have um, in our corner would
Hmm.
be the Mid-South Food Bank for sure. We
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
love Kroger to, continue to be a great partner to us as we think about expanding the food pantry as well. I also think about we've worked with the Office of Sustainability here at the university, and we're
Mhm.
working with I think the network is called Care It, like almost a spin on Carrot, right?
Oh,
Where
okay.
yeah, where they are a sustainability group that if let's just say Panera is looking to throw out bread tonight, we could recycle that bread here and give it out to students the next day,
Mhm.
right? Or if Kroger is about to get rid of something, then we can also take that on and give it out. So I would love to grow in that area that we can start to become more sustainable in the city of
Yeah.
Memphis, but also on campus to provide more for our students. And I think on campus has been great, right? So I've been on this listening tour and I've been meeting with everybody across the entire campus. And, I think some of the areas that will most align for the work that we're looking to do will probably be social work as well as the psychology department. So I met with both of those groups as well as the other groups across campus. Everybody's been great. But I think for the work that we do as student support, the food pantry, as well as the behavioral intervention team, I think that those areas, psychology and social work, will be some of the more premier offices that we work with as we think about expanding some of the support that requires teamwork, shared communication, and commitments to seeing, students as whole people. In the
Mhm.
industries of social work and psychology, that is the nature of the work that happens within those spaces anyway. And I think for the work that we're looking to do, they make themselves an ideal partner in my eyes.
Right, right. And so with thinking about social work, would it be more like with the department leaders and faculty or more of the students that are a part of those programs?
It's actually both. So when I met
Yeah.
with social work last week, and I have a meeting coming up in March with the faculty, um, for example, with the supper club series, a lot of that the students can help support because
Yeah.
some of the students, for example, in social work, they need volunteer hours.
Right.
So these are opportunities where they can fulfill some of their hours, but we also need that support. But this also falls within their scope of what they do and what they possibly
Right.
can do once they graduate. The same
Yeah.
thing with the longest table. As we think about these 300 people potentially coming to campus, we'll need a lot of hands on deck for that. So thinking about the students for like the foot power and the foot traffic and the
Mhm.
ability to help us promote, but also from a structural standpoint, I might need social work and psychology to help promote it, but also to help lift it and launch it. So I think
Mhm.
they'll be cornerstones for the people that they know in the community, but also from some of the things that they'll teach from an academic standpoint, it starts to bridge the gap
Yeah.
between just student affairs and academic affairs, and now it becomes a co-curricular experience.
Yeah.
So, I really look forward to partnerships from academics really crossing over into our world too.
Mm.
That's really good. I
Yeah.
like that exchange that's going to happen with that between the students and the experience too. So,
Me too, right? Because,
yeah.
for me, I think it also starts to break down it's staff over there, it's faculty over here, and it's students over here, right? And
Mhm.
I think if we can start to get back to the core of we're just people, we're just people in different stages right now,
Right.
right? But
I like
ultimately,
that.
right, the student, you can see firsthand what it looks like to work closely with me, and there's not a real separation, but you can now role model some of the things you learn here, take that back to the student clubs or organizations, or even some of the potential work that you'll do, in the future and learn it firsthand, right? So I think
Mhm.
it's a really cool blend and merge that is really different and unique that I think can really spark
Yeah.
a lot of great things at the university.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you for that vision.
Yeah.
And you talking about blending and merging people together, with that being social work and the staff and faculty being there for students, and the parent and families want to help too. So
Mhm.
transitioning to like student independence, what would you say the best way to support their students while still, encouraging that independence?
Yeah, I think every student is different, right? And I can't even say student, right? Every child or whoever it is coming from these households is different, right? I think we're all students as long as we live. So I'm still a student, I'm still learning. But how do we develop that? And I think it's just a unique thing for each family. So one, just checking in and knowing what it is that your student may need or your child may need, or young adult rather may need, right? Because we're in the space of growing and getting better. But I think consistently just kind of checking in, right? Understanding that there are offices like y'all's that will help, parents stay connected, but also asking the parents, what do they what do they need to feel like they are still connected, right? I think your office does a phenomenal job. I think in my first few weeks, what was it? It was parent and family weekend, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to come to that, and I thought that was so cool because very quickly you get an opportunity to come back. And I would say that that is really important for young adults, students, children, whatever, to feel like they still have a support system. Oftentimes, when you get into the space of higher ed, and you're in college and you're not at home anymore, and you may travel away from home, or you're just physically not in the house. Sometimes it can feel isolating, especially as that work starts to get a little bit more difficult, especially
Mhm.
as you might not have the answers that you thought you had, especially as challenges continue to arise. I think knowing that you have support, especially from your family, is important, but as well as the university is important. So for families to be able to still stay attached to whoever it is that came to the university, but also to stay attached to some of the offices, right?
Mhm.
This is not a the student is doing this by themselves, right? This is a literal family effort, right? Sometimes that's what
Mhm.
it takes to get people to the finish line.
Yeah,
So
that village.
we are an extension of family to help see that, but we also need the support of families to stay attached to and do some of the things that we might not be able to do, or reach in some places that we might not be able to reach. So this is a collaborative effort all around. So, as long as you guys are still doing the work that you're doing to invite families to come out, I would say parents, please stay connected. And I think as these events come, please do that, and please read the newsletters, right? And as these webinars come out, watch those and stay connected. If you have questions, please reach out, and we're happy to help.
That's good.
Mhm.
So I think you actually kind of touched really good on this next question. So I'm not even going to ask it. I'm just going to have Brittany go to the next question because it was really dealing with how parents and families how they can partner more intentionally. So you hit the nail on the head with that one. Good.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So Brittany,
Yeah.
you can go to the next. Yeah.
Okay. So, how do you communicate with families when students may be experiencing challenges while still, respecting their privacy?
Yeah, so we always prioritize student privacy, and we follow federal guidelines like FERPA, of course. When appropriate, we encourage students to involve their families to facilitate some of these conversations. And we want to empower students to remain at the center of decision making, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes, I think uh, we fall in this ambiguous space, like, who's going to say it? Are you going to say it? Or am I going to say it? Right? But we want to get into the space of growth because ultimately, again, like I mentioned earlier, we want the student to become the best version of themselves. So once they go out into the world, they feel inclined and equipped to handle whatever situations arise. So, we will respect the student's privacy, and we will follow, all the federal guidelines that it says so, while also encouraging the student to be able to step up and take on some of these difficult conversations. Because as you get older in the world, there will only become more difficult situations that will arise. And the sooner we can get people to kind of face those challenges and issues more quickly and understand how to potentially handle it better, they'll feel more equipped and inclined to, move forward and handle it appropriately.
That's good. So still
Mhm.
encouraging that growth, but
Absolutely.
families staying engaged. I tell them to lean in,
That's right. We
not
just might
disconnect.
nudge you over there a
Yeah.
little bit quicker,
Yeah, but
right?
not taking the lead, I don't
That's right.
think,
That's right.
which can encourage that independence. So I'm glad that families that reminder in our
Mm.
session today. So we may come across some families who want to help their students. Maybe they're worried about their student and their well-being and their personal development and again that feeling of loneliness. So how do you kind of navigate or walk and guide those family members who are worried but aren't sure how to step in or even when to step in? They know they want their student to be independent, but it's like, am I do I
Yeah.
do I step in now or do I stay back and let them handle it?
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to those families?
Yeah, and I think that there is a fine line. I think that I love the parents, but sometimes they can let go a little bit, right? There was a story when I was at when I was at Belmont, working in residence life. I would get a call from a mom, and she would have find my iPhone on her son, and she said, my son is supposed to be in class, but it looks like he's in the residence hall. Can you go check on him? Ma'am, your son is skipping school today. He's okay, right? So again, some of those things is they're learning and they're developing on their own. Sometimes they have to bump their head along the way in order to learn. Right now, yes, I'll wake your son up and tell him to go to class in that space, but you should be having that conversation with your son to tell him to go to class, right? Because if that's the case, I got a whole building to wake up right now, right?
Oh my goodness.
Maybe we need to think about not taking 8 a.m.s if you're not a morning person, right?
Right.
So, sometimes the conversation looks like that. But also as a parent who might be worried about, what's going on, I would say trust your instincts, right? But start by encouraging your student to reach out for support, whatever that may be. If you're concerned about, some of the things that I kind of talked about in the Dean of Students office that can help with, then please reach out. I mean, we want to help your student grow. We want to help their independence happen, and we want to make sure that they are well, they're well versed in what their support options could be, right? Where are your
Right.
resources? What's out there for you, and what can you take advantage of? My grandmother used to tell me, "A closed mouth don't get fed," right? So if you
That's
need
true.
help, you better go
And
ask for
ask
help.
for it.
Yeah, that's right. And my grandfather, same thing. I mean, I was catching the bus when I was like 8 years old, right? And I didn't know how to catch the bus. I mean, they would give me the bus route, and this was back when you had like physical pamphlets of paper, you know what
Right.
I
With
mean?
maps on there.
Yeah. So I mean, there wasn't a cell phone. Like you missed the route, and you got to figure it out. But you know, as that happened and as I missed my stops and as I may have got on the wrong transfer on the bus, I had to ask questions. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm trying to get here. Can you tell me how to get here? Right? Sometimes it's just that. And I think my challenge that I would challenge all parents to is to help your student find their voice, right? Let them know that asking questions is a superpower, it's a strength. And the better you ask and the more you ask, the more that you will receive back. So, don't be scared to ask the questions. And it's not bad that you don't know because 9 times out of 10, somebody else doesn't know either, right? But you just had the strength to ask. So I would say, please use your instincts, trust your gut, and make a connection to the Dean of Students office if you feel like you need some additional support because we're happy to help. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I'm a parent of a graduating college senior, and we've been dealing with that particular issue is having that confidence to ask.
Yeah,
And even, when they come through new student orientation and we spend time talking to the families that are there with their student, that's one thing that we try to remind them of, help your student to ask early and ask often.
that's right.
Ask early and ask often.
That is it.
So thank you. I needed that reminder right there. I don't know about y'all out there, but I think that one was exactly for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was perfect. It actually kind of ties into the next question, because you talked about helping them build skills that will serve them, beyond college. And so what about like building resilience and problem solving skills? I know you said that building confidence is key for sure.
Yeah. So, I think resilience is difficult, right? So a lot of resilience comes from upbringing, and for me, my resilience started by way of my grandparents. My grandparents were poor, right? So we didn't have a lot, and we had to figure things out in different ways. And I remember even going to Catholic school. I went to Catholic school on, reduced tuition because my grandparents were retired and they didn't have money, right? I was on free and reduced lunch, right? So a lot of my upbringing is what impacts me now, and that's part of my lens, right? That's why this food pantry matters so much to me. That's why I'm trying to help navigate people into this space to get in and to get out and find, meaningful wage to grow and start your own family or whatever it is that you want to do. So, for me, when I think about resiliency, if you never had those opportunities to become resilient, rather than fixing the problem, what can I do to coach you through some of those challenges, right? And we try to help people consider and reflect what some of those options may be and learn from experiences so they can, again, leave the university better prepared and, be ready to take on whatever life throws at you because life's gonna be life, right? And it's gonna be at the most inopportune time as well. So to have people be the most prepared that they can be, and by just trying to, again, fill in the gap and be in some of the spaces to help students understand that we're not here to fix it, but we want to help coach you so you're ready for it when the next time comes and we're not here next to you.
Mm, I love that.
So that thinking about this resilience and independence and coaching students, do you have an example of maybe a story of a student that your office has helped and that you've made that type of meaningful impact on? Not necessarily revealing who they are, but just
Sure.
like I guess um, a inspirational story that you can leave with families.
Yeah. Yeah, so I actually had a student reach out to me just last week, and the student was having some issues with one of the faculty members, and they told me this story, about how they got an I in a class and how what they're asked to do this term to help get a grade for the I, and I'm talking to the student. I asked the student towards the end of the explanation, I said, "How did you find me?" Right? Because I'm genuinely curious. Like I want to help you, and I am going to help you. But tell me, how did you find me? And then they said, I was talking to somebody who works in higher ed at somewhere else, and they said this person is the person you need to reach out to help. And it was me. And I was thankful that they had somebody who could point them in the right direction.
Mhm.
And uh, the student reached out to me, and I immediately, reached out to somebody else. I followed up with a student, and they told me, "You make things move, right? I've been trying to do this for a long time." And somebody told me to reach out. I did reach out. And as soon as I reached out, things started to change. And to
Mm.
me, that was just a story of it was so significant for that person. And I'm not saying it wasn't big for me, but it was something that I could do very quickly. Right. And the things that I can do very quickly can also really impact the way that a student feels and potentially the trajectory of that student and their time here and how they see other offices and other things.
Mm.
So, for me, I feel like I'm a conduit for a lot of things. And if I can get my part right, it can help do a lot of other things right. So, in that one small example, it made me feel like, yes, you are in the right place and you are a connector of things and you can solve a lot of things. Um, so, I was happy that, one, the student found me, but also, the amount of students who now do come to me quite a bit because they start to see me out in a lot of places. Like I feel like the office it is not what you would traditionally think a dean of students office used to be, right? It looks a lot
Right.
different, and I want it to look different. I want it to look like a space where it feels safe. I want it to look like a place where you feel like you're at home away from home. I want it to feel like if I don't know what to do, I can go to Dean Cam. Like he knows where to go and what to do, even if it has nothing to do with him. He got the answers, right? So
Right.
that makes me feel good, that people start to find me and see me as a person who can get things done and as a support person by, just connecting.
Mm.
So
That's
wonderful.
good.
Yeah, you make things move. So for our final thoughts question, what message would you most want parents to hear about how the Dean of Students Office supports student success?
Yeah. So our office is here to, support. We're here to guide, and we're here to be advocates for students and to help them grow to become more confident and capable adults who will go out and be, great members of society. We want to partner with parents, right? We want parents to feel connected to us. We want parents to know that we are here as an extension of them, right? To make sure that we can kind of fill in again some of those gaps that may persist. Um, and we're committed to helping them thrive and become the best versions again. And you know, I'm committed the same way that I think that a lot of parents are committed. As somebody who's first gen, low income, a lot of challenges and a lot of obstacles were placed, in front of me and on me. And
Mhm.
as somebody who learned how to navigate it almost by themselves, really just by asking questions. I want you to know that, you have somebody here who has navigated it uh, 3 times up to a doctorate. And, I've lived a lot of the challenges that I think a lot of students face, right? Whether it be low income, whether it be first gen, whether it be familial lack of support, uh, whatever the case is, right? Resiliency is one of the things that I think can get you a long way.
Hmm.
Resiliency, asking questions, and being somewhat vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think getting out there, putting yourself out there, it goes such a long way. One last thing I'll say is, when I was at my previous institution, I was in Chicago, of course, and I had really, really good relationships at United Airlines. And so much so that United Airlines is headquartered in Chicago, of course. But they were asking me, Dean Cameron, who do you have? What students do you have to recommend to us to take on this internship opportunity? And, I'm thinking to myself, I wish I knew more people, right? Like I love
Mm-hmm.
the people I know, but people just don't know that the more you get out there and the more you put yourself out there, great things start to come back to you. So for parents, please encourage your students to get out there, put themselves out there, ask for help, get involved, and just be seen. Ask the
Mm-hmm.
hard questions, be present, uh, and for parents to just be supportive because it gets
Mm-hmm.
really hard, sometimes in this space, in this stage of life that sometimes it just feels good to say, I see you and you're doing a good job, even if it's not the best job, right? But just to
Right.
tell
Right.
me I'm still here and I'm still doing it,
Encouragement.
that encouragement goes such a long way. So,
Yeah.
as a parent, please be there, support them, encourage them, show up. Showing up matters so much. And again, our office is here to really support and be an extension of you as a family member.
All right, that's awesome. Now you all heard. Let me say, Dean Cam. I like that. That has a ring to it.
That's what they call
Um,
me.
Yeah, yeah. And so we have the contact information. As he said, staying engaged, encouraging your student. So I want to make sure that you have this contact information for the Dean of Students office if you have questions about anything. They're located right in the Maxine A. Smith University Center on the third floor, room 359. And this is their contact information. You can share with your student, but save it in your own phone in case you need assistance. Of course, you can always reach out to Parent and Family Services by call, text, email, or come into our office if you forget this information and need it, or need us to refer you or walk you to and your student where you need to go for assistance. So we thank you, Dean Cameron. For spending time with us today, enlightening the families. Hope that that you all got as much out of it as Brittany and I did, and especially me. And so we want to thank you for that. Brittany did put that link in the chat right there. I do have a few announcements, so I'm gonna go ahead. One, our Parent and Family Spring Day is coming up. Dean Cameron mentioned, showing up, so we want you to show up to Parent and Family Spring Day. Next Sunday, February 22nd, we have our family and friends mingle at 9 a.m. with free food and drinks. We're going to play some bingo, have music and giveaways, and then we'll head over to the FedEx Forum at 11 o'clock to cheer on the Tigers as they play UAB. So get your tickets today on our website, and we want you and your family and your student to enjoy time with each other and time at Parent and Family Spring Day. Also, our care package deadline is February 23rd coming up. But we want you to show that support for your student. We know you love them, but a little tangible support doesn't doesn't hurt as well. So that you can do that through our care package bundles where they get a hug from home around midterms and they get a finals care package, or you can just get the hugs from home if you prefer to do that. But definitely show your students some love with those care packages before February 23rd. And then our next Target Talk will be March 3rd, where we're going to have our campus partners from financial aid and scholarships talk about some updates for the FAFSA and scholarship opportunities for the next academic year. So you don't want to miss that one either. And then lastly, join the Parent and Family Association. This is your gateway to deeper connection and understanding of your students' experience. You get a newsletter every other week. You get some swag too. You get free parking when you come to the central campus by letting us know in advance that you're a member. There's a scholarship attached, a scholarship opportunity where your student can apply for the Parent Fund one-time scholarship, and we give 12 of those away for $100 each that can go toward tuition and living expenses. So we want to make sure that you know about the Parent and Family Association. And I think that's all of the announcements and reminders I have. But we thank you for attending this Tiger Talk or checking in, listening in to the recording if that's you. We'll see you on the next Tiger Talk. Thank you, Dr. Cameron, for taking the time with us. And we will see you all later. So have a great rest of your week.
Bye, everybody.